Cool. Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, where everybody is. Super excited to talk today. My track is around simplifying secrets management in the public cloud. My name is Kevin Tuffner. I actually am oh, my slides are not moving. I work for a cloud and DevOps consultancy called Ahead. We're actually a HashiCorp partner based in the Midwest. I actually live on the East Coast in the Carolinas. Pretty close to the HashiCorp community. I actually lead a couple user groups out on the East Coast. So super passionate about the Hashi community in general. A little bit of background on me from an IT perspective. I've been in IT for about 19, 20 years with a big focus on cloud and DevOps the last 4 or 5 years. From a technology passion perspective, anything Azure, AWS, obviously HashiCorp. I spent a lot of my time lately on Console and Vault and some Terraform, and then Pivotal Cloud Foundry. I'm actually out on the Twitter universe at ktuffner is my handle. I do have a GitHub, Tuffy-Cloud. I'll post this presentation and any code samples later. And then if anyone wants to shoot any emails for any follow-up questions, here's my personal email. So what I kind of wanted to share today is I get to work with a lot of cool clients, from a partner perspective, and I kind of just wanted to share the secrets landscape today of, how I've been viewing and working with clients from a secrets landscape. Outside of a couple PowerPoint slides, I actually want to show you some cool demos around some of the cool features and functionality of how you can actually centralize a lot of your cloud services that you're leveraging and how you can centralize that within Vault. So we'll take a look at some AWS IAM control, some SSH one-time password for managing Linux servers, and then we'll actually dive into some database secrets management, so around SQL on Windows, and then actually Azure RDS, kind of their database as a service. So from a secrets landscape today, everybody, traditionally kind of started off in this private cloud data center, islands of storage, tons of servers, tons of compute, EUC here and there, just servers everywhere. The same is true with applications, from a static, perspective. And, if we kind of look at how we were designing apps, traditionally, a lot of our apps were shaped around this, monolithic approach. Everything was tightly coupled together. Secrets were either hard-coded or potentially stored on someone's keyboard or monitor for like what the password was to actually log in. And a lot of the, there was issues with, if you actually had to reset the password, like, are you going to do that without actually breaking my monolithic app? Over the last, fast forward the last 2-3 years, cloud has kind of taken off and, has actually simplified and, created efficiencies for how we build apps. Maybe it might have complexed it a little bit, but, at the end of the day, we have a lot more features and functionality than like what we didn't have before. And, when we start designing apps, we're starting to strip services away. We're starting to leverage some cool features and functionalities like, Spring or Golang or Rails, and, leveraging some, newer database technologies like MongoDB or even Cassandra, et cetera, while utilizing services like Azure, AWS, GCP, whatever it may be. But the big challenge is, how do you manage these secrets? Now that you're starting to distribute your app, there's different services that you're leveraging, and just trying to tie the whole secret story together. Secrets, for those who aren't familiar with Vault, think of secrets. Really, the basic definition is, think of like end user credentials or API tokens that your application needs to leverage to actually communicate. Maybe you're doing certificate of authority, with from a PKI perspective, database, SSH logins, et cetera. And the challenges, like I actually get to see a lot with my clients today is, how do we actually centralize our secrets? You're managing all these different apps, you're managing all these public cloud providers. How do we manage the lifecycle of a secret, from start to finish? How do we shift it from being hard-coded and static to being dynamic? How do we mitigate any security concerns if an application is compromised, or Sally Q actually just leaves the organization and we need to start actually revoking credentials. Without a secrets management tool in place like Vault, it's a lot to kind of tackle, and it's quite difficult. So enter HashiCorp Vault. Eliminate secret sprawl. We can easily secure and store data, and we can actually govern our secrets from a single pane of glass. The beauty of it is like what I like to call this art of the possible. If you look at all the public cloud providers today, Google's got their own, Amazon and Azure kind of have their own secrets management. There's some other third-party ones that are actually out there too. But how do you get immediate value out of the box? And that's what Vault provides, immediately from a secrets engine. And here's a quick sample of, if you haven't actually used Vault before or actually seen the dashboard. There's immediate value from day one of leveraging cloud services that you're using today and actually integrating it into Vault, from the single pane of glass approach. I actually have a couple demos that I kind of just wanted to kind of go through, like I kind of walked through earlier. From a demo environment perspective for me, just wanted to kind of do a quick video just so everyone kind of, this isn't smoke and mirrors, is actually real live. But, kind of on the left, I've got a couple of resources up and running up in Amazon, a couple Ubuntu, prod and dev servers or instances. In Azure, that's actually where my open source Vault is. That's actually doing this single pane of glass. I'm leveraging some, Azure RDS and, SQL on Windows servers, and also some, Ubuntu servers where I'm doing kind of my SSH, one-time password. Like I kind of talked about a couple of minutes ago about kind of the use cases I kind of wanted to share. The first one that I kind of wanted to share about is around the one-time password. So, we touched on a couple slides a couple minutes ago about, managing servers across, Amazon and Azure and Google. And you start in a small pod, or you start getting up into the hundreds and thousands. And it's really kind of difficult at that point. And this is where one-time password comes in to actually centralize these secrets, be able to control them from start to finish, be able to, rotate them. And then also, enable you to do detailed leasing and, auditing and logging of events. When was a token, initiated? When did you revoke it? Et cetera, et cetera. And just to kind of give you some highlights of, what went in from a configuration on my side, really simple out of the gate. You just enable the engine, you create a policy, you actually install this SSH helper, and, make a couple SSH config, changes, and I'll actually show you the file in a minute or two. And then, start and stop services, and you're up and running. From a workflow perspective, it's super simplified. A user that's logging into this Azure VM is going to request the one-time password from Vault. Either through the CLI or the API, depending on how you open it up to your developers. And then that one-time password is actually returned to the user. The user will then authenticate, and, the SSH helper is actually going to do the validation and, actually pass it through. You'll see this on a couple of my other slides. I just wanted to share the community of, documentation, FAQs, if you're kind of stumbling, trying to actually, build this on your own. But let me pull this up real quick. So everybody should be able to see kind of my Vault secret engine. Got a couple of the engines that I've already, pre-configured. You can kind of see, the SSH engine already, and, the role that I actually created. Like I kind of was, explaining earlier, it's super simple to get this up and running out of the box. From a Vault policy, you're just defining your users that you're allowed to log in, the port they're going to be in, and then, a sender list to actually authenticate against. Highly do not recommend keeping this, 0.0.0, but I wanted to cheat the system and not have to do any troubleshooting. From a Azure perspective, let's actually, I've got it already up. And I will show you how simple this is, after the config is done, how you can centralize and be able to, request a token to actually log in with one-time password. Let me just pull up my VM. Okay. I already created a generic user on my box. You can kind of see kind of how I staged this. I actually did a pre-config already from a.
Hey, Kevin.
Yep, go ahead.
We're still looking at your PowerPoint slides. I think.
Oh.
Yeah. Wanted to make you aware of that. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I was like 14 windows past. All right, can you guys see like an Azure window and a text doc?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
All right, I'm so sorry. All right, so like I was kind of explaining before, I kind of automated this whole process from a bash script perspective. So I wasn't actually going through and configuring this, and I'll actually post this so that everyone has this. But really, when I kind of explained kind of the walkthrough of how I preceded this, on my servers, I actually, it goes out, downloads my helper, installs it, makes my directories for the install. This is the important stuff from a Vault perspective. How are you going to communicate? So my Azure Vault server, where is it? What's the IP range? What is the port that it's running on? What is my mount engine within Vault? I'm using a dev, Vault role to actually, allow, my end user to go request this one-time password. And I am doing skip verification for TLS. I highly recommend not to do that in production, but for demo purposes, just to make things easier for me. And then, like same thing with the IP range, I would lock that down from a production. But you can see how straightforward it is just to get this up and running super quick and, start getting an immediate win to leverage Vault and, one-time password. So from a server perspective, let's actually request our certificate or our SSH credential. So you can do this command line. You can do this through the web. I just wanted to do the web just to make it easier from a visualization so everybody can kind of see it. But my username that I'm using on my server is Bob, and my IP address of my Azure VM. Click generate. You can see how easy it is to grab a secret and let me log in with that one-time password. And that didn't work. Hooray, the demo guys are with me. And you can see how easy it is for your developers or even your app owner or a third-party consultant to, leverage Vault from one-time password to actually log into, your Unix, Linux, Red Hat, whatever it may be. So like I said, this is an easy way to actually centralize, the logins. I was a customer before. It's super difficult when it's time to change passwords, every quarter across 1,000 servers. So, to be able to streamline this, this is an immediate, win with Vault in my mind. The second one, everyone's leveraging AWS. So the second kind of scenario I kind of wanted to walk through is, this concept of leveraging Vault from identity and access management for access keys. So, think of like a consultant or another group that needs particular access to, a feature or functionality within Amazon. You can actually control that from an API perspective. So, like a developer that only needs specific instances in AWS from an EC2 perspective, you can actually, tag those instances and say, hey, these dev servers only, you can actually, log into, based upon the API, token that you're getting back from Vault. And, same again, the detailed lease auditing and login. But the cool thing is this ties into every one of, all the various, features and functionalities of Amazon. So you can control policies from an EC2, from an S3 bucket, all the way through some of the, advanced features. Again, super easy to get up and running. It's just a matter of just mounting the engine and, configuring credentials and creating a role. If you've already been using AWS, this is just a sample policy, but you can see how easy it is, to leverage existing policies and actually tie them in with Vault. So let me actually kind of walk you through some dev servers that I have up and running where we can actually generate a credential within Vault and actually start and stop the instances based upon our login within Vault. So pretty simple that I've got running up in here in AWS. I've got a couple dev servers, I got a couple prod servers, and from a tagging perspective, like I mentioned earlier, where you can actually tag your policies, I'm actually flagging it with, the prod, or I'm flagging it with, the dev. So you can actually control this, once a user logs in, what they can actually do based upon a dynamic, identity and access management. So I'll do this again through kind of the portal, just to kind of show you how easy it is. I already have my engine already running, my credential type, I can generate it, and you'll kind of see the access key and our secret key. So please do not copy that. I don't need a 1,000 VMs spun up. But if we go into our IAM section, you can kind of see, how Vault actually has already gone out, created my new user, the policy, like I was kind of talking about how simple it is to kind of, tie it together. You can see that, based upon my policy I have, I'm only allowing my developer to start and stop. I'm also allowing them to, kind of describe this. So let's actually log in to the CLI real quick, and then I'll show you, how easy it is to leverage Vault to log in. Just as simple as just updating your config file. My resources are in USDs 2. And I've actually pre-staged some of this so that I don't have to type the commands, but you can see how easy it is to use just the basic commands to start and stop this. Let me just update this to stop, and I can show you we've already authenticated, we've logged in, and we can shut this down. So for this particular VM or instance, ends in D86. If we go back to our console, right here, so there's my dev server. If I actually go and issue the command, based upon what I just got authenticated with Vault and what passed through, for my IAM credential. You can see that I was authorized to actually stop based upon that dev policy I was talking about from the tagging. You can see that we're actually stopping. And if we do a quick refresh, you'll see it stopping. If I try to do a prod, it should actually deny it because based upon my policy, I don't have access. So let me show you that real quick. Oops. So you can see that, based upon my Vault and AWS IAM policy, I'm not allowed to actually do anything with production. And then my last use case I kind of wanted to, kind of showcase was around, using Vault for, database, secrets. Whether it could be MongoDB, could be Cassandra, could be Postgres, whatever it may be, you can utilize, the single pane of glass to, manage, database secrets, be able to, rotate your database logins, on a frequent basis, be able to revoke them if, a particular employee leaves the organization, et cetera. Out of the gate, this is just a sampling of them, but, there's numerous databases that are supported out of the gate. Today, I'm actually just going to do SQL, both Azure and on Windows. And, from a process perspective, super simple, again, to get up and running, just creating your database backend, creating your policy and, your connection strengths. From a workflow perspective, once all that's kind of done, your developer, your infrastructure engineer, whoever it may be, can actually go into the CLI or, through the GUI and actually request these credentials. So let me pull up my SQL server. And we will issue some Vault credentials. And I'm actually going to cheat so I don't have to remember the command line. So I just, it's as simple as just, reading the database, /cred/my role. It's going to generate, credentials from that engine. You can see I've got my Vault generated username, vroot. We'll kind of look for 9681 at the end, and then our auto-generated password. So if I do a refresh, I should see a new login. And I have one database that's been exposed. I just created a generic database just for fun, and 155.0.789.681. And we can see 789.681. Now, from an Azure RDS perspective, same concept. From the credentials, so we can actually, and I'll show you the credentials how they show up within Azure. I can issue a username and password, and after I log in and we see that we can have a credential. I'll actually do this command line too from a SQL CMDB, and then we can actually list out some databases. So 89758, and we should see the same thing in the portal. 89758. Now, you can do the same thing from a SQL command, like I kind of mentioned. So you could actually have your end users or your developers use this credential, and they can actually do basic, SQL functionality from using SQL tools. So let me grab the login, and then I can show you that real quick. And I did not grab that. And see, you're already authenticated within SQL from a command line. So once this has been auto-generated, a developer can go in and actually just, run their SQL commands like listing databases, dropping databases, displaying, adding tables, etc. Whether it's, both through the SQL Management Studio or, from a command line. And so in summary, Vault is awesome. We got to see how easy it is to get up and running, be able to, consolidate, our various public cloud resources like our Ubuntu Linux servers, some of the Azure SQL services, and, also just a normal SQL server. And then also AWS, we're able to do this in a single pane of glass and, be able to manage it, from us all, through the whole entire life cycle. Other cool things I didn't show today, but, you can do some, policy as code from a security. So like if you want to, tie down when people can actually log in or grab tokens and credentials, you can actually set, compliance framework policies around that. We saw how easy it was, out of the box to be ready. And, the last, big point I wanted to make was around, the user community, utilize it. There's tons of documentation. There's tons of cool code snippets, if you get stuck. And, there's, also the HashiLearn website, if you've actually never done Vault and can, actually walk you through and, explain and, teach you these, various scenarios that I kind of walked through. And that is the end of my presentation.